Cheers. I'm heading to Sedona to interview someone that I met during my last trip to Sedona. I was in this store called the Victorian Cowgirl, just fun, whimsical clothing, and in walks this beautiful being of light, vivacious, chatting with her friend, chatting with the store owner whom she knew personally, and I couldn't help but be enamored with her, and I wanted to engage with her, so I started talking to her and found out that she had shared the stage at a conference with my meditation teacher, Dr. Deepak Chopra. She showed me some pictures, and she had written this book called The Healing Consciousness about her awakening and how she's integrating that awakening of her own higher consciousness into Western medicine. I found out she's a practicing surgeon. She's board certified in integrative and holistic health. She is a huge advocate for women's health care, and she's also big into psychedelics, not for recreational use, but for healing the causes of these diseases that she's treating. So I asked her if I could interview her because with her amount of influence and the powerful positions that she's held, I was curious how someone remains in the light with the intention to serve humanity instead of using that power to be self-serving. Because I've noticed that the corruption that is so rampant is because people have lost touch with the greater good. And that means that they've lost touch with themselves and their own self-love. So as I head to Sedona to interview Dr. Beth DuPree, I am so excited to bring you the full story of how this mother, wife, daughter, sister, friend of humanity showcases power in a balanced way. Hey, we're here. I'm so honored to be invited into Dr. DuPree's home. I've spent a lot of time in the homes of celebrities and CEOs and leaders as a healer and as a journalist of over 15 years. But I'm particularly honored because I know that I'm about to come away with something that could change history, a guidebook for how to become a leader of Newark. Let's go.
I'm the seventh of 7 children. Grew up in York, Pennsylvania. My dad passed away. We're actually going, these are my mom's ashes. My dad's are going to be in there with hers. My dad passed away last month, and he had a wonderful life. He was 94. I got to be with him the weekend he passed, and my sisters and we're all getting together to celebrate his life and spread his ashes next weekend. And my dad was a police officer. He had started his own construction company. Finished high school, was in the military, never went to college. My mom finished 8th grade, never went to high school. They raised 7 kids, and they, we learned unconditional love. Had the same stuff that a lot of families have, but no, we didn't have any drug abuse with our 7 of us. Lost my brother tragically to a drunk driver when I was 17, and my dad instilled in every single one of us the exact same moral compass and sense of self-worth, where he said the only limitations you have in life are those you place on yourself. And so if you have limiting thought forms and beliefs, you're never going to accomplish something that other people might be afraid to do, might take a step back to do. And I've done that through my entire career up until, the NBC nightly news story that aired here last October.
Healthcare.
And they told her what?
They couldn't find anything.
Eventually, Pat saw breast surgeon Beth DuPree.
I literally couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was screaming cancer.
Advanced breast cancer. 2 years later, Pat was gone. Dr. DuPree had just moved to Sedona to develop a state-of-the-art breast center at NAH. Pat was just the first patient, she says, who came to her with a cancer missed on previous scans.
These were misses that were not subtle. After the NBC nightly news segment dropped, I think it was about 6 weeks later, the Boston Globe had a story of a radiologist in New Hampshire who had missed a lot of cancers, and it was kind of like we kind of set the stage to be able to bring out the truth.
You didn't let the noise affect your experience.
I had people tell me, you shouldn't tell what happened in the health system out here, just because. And I said, here's the thing: the truth will speak for itself. And if you're not living in your truth, and you're not bringing the truth forward, you're going to be found out. But if you're living in your truth, then you got to be it. You got to do it. And to not live in your truth and let things pass by and not hold people accountable. And we do that a lot. We do that too much in society, where people aren't held accountable for what they do. And it's not about retribution. It's just about, we've got to live in a balanced world, and we're really out of balance right now. And
thank you for setting that example, because in this state of consciousness, a lot of people are waking up to the fact that they're healers, and there's an old belief that healers can't make money, healers aren't taken seriously, and it's like seeing people like you who have integrated their soul calling of being a healer into a way to do it in the world. That's really inspiring. I think a lot of people,
listen, I'm a
including
work
myself,
in progress, sister.
needed to hear that.
I'm a work in progress.
And that you are still going, like you're not resting on your laurels, which you definitely could do. You've done so much and saved so many lives and made so much change. But you're still going. Is that for a certain reason, or you just enjoy it?
It's who I am, and it's why I incarnated in this lifetime, I believe. It was it's my purpose. I mean, when you align with your soul's purpose, everything falls into place. And I really feel like and believe me, I got bad days. I mean, working in 3 startups is not an easy rodeo. Trust me. It's the pay is not great. The emotional turmoil can be difficult, but watching individuals who are suffering heal is the greatest gift in the world.
I love seeing people who are aligned, and you obviously do a lot of work to stay aligned, like your meditations and your practices and your family and your friends. I think you've really developed a lot of balance. I don't know how easy that is with your busy career. I noticed that rock over there. But what I'm noticing from you, devoting yourself to
this
balance.
Was a gift from the woman that channels Raphael. This is Kelly Kolodny gave me this, and she said, you're supposed to have this because balance is something that we have to create. You just don't find it in a box in the cupboard. And I got really out of balance in the, working in my Western medical world. I mean, taking care of way too many patients. I didn't take care of myself. And it's something that as I move back into surgery again this year, which I love, and I've been doing it a little bit, but not back into it full time. I know that if I don't create that balance for me, nobody else is going to do it, and that means that as women, we kind of suck at saying no. So for every yes, you need to put a no in your little bag of tricks, so that you can bring that no out when you need to, and then you need to say no in a nice way. And the way to say no that is a good way is when, like, if you had said to me, hey Beth, do you have an hour today? I mean, I'm getting on a red eye tonight, and
you're so busy.
Right, but I loved your juju when I met you. If I couldn't do it, I would have said, oh, Amanda, I loved meeting you, and I would love to do an interview, but tomorrow just doesn't work for me. Which is a nice way of saying no.
Yeah.
Because you're not saying in your face no, you're saying, I've given it consideration, I've actually thought it over, and it just doesn't work for me at this time.
Something that simple is so healthy for us women to hear. Like,
yeah. And the other thing is, sometimes when something is a no, you can say hell no. Not going to happen. Because if there's something that you would never ever consider doing, that's the time when you give your definitive no. I'm not doing that.
So you have stopped yourself from getting discouraged by, you have a why. You have a why.
Oh, yeah.
And you tune in to your intuition, your source. And I feel like the best leaders these days have a balance of higher consciousness and drive and like commitment to the higher good. Do you feel like that's accurate?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that somebody was asking me, like, besides the cancer community and the veterans and people that are suffering with depression, where do you think you can make the biggest impact? And I said, well, I actually believe that as psilocybin and MDMA become legalized, many C-suite leaders will want to take the opportunity to truly know who they are deep inside, like what is their why? Like, they know what their why is from a, got to make the ROI, you make your P&L work in your company, go out and be successful. But it's that combination of being successful without hurting another group. When you profit off of somebody else's downfall, or if anything that you're doing to make money is in any way harming another group, you've got to be able to see that. And I think that as leaders awaken to source and their deeper inner consciousness, I think the world can be a better place. And so,
Because you've had some pretty monumental decisions you've made in your life regarding, awakening, pursuing holistic health and higher consciousness, and making decisions with how you practice medicine. And where are you at right now on your path, your career path?
it's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm finishing my second book called Shifting Gears, Living Life with Intention. I had written the first manuscript and shelved it back in 2018. My dad wanted to read it, and he read it and loved it. So.
Oh, your dad got to read it.
Oh yeah, he got to read it.
Oh, good.
But I knew that it wasn't done. It wasn't ready to be published. And at the time, I was in the midst of a lot of turmoil within the health system out here in Arizona, and it really pushed me physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I have always practiced state-of-the-art Western medicine. I work with a lot of transformative companies. I mean, I'm leaving for Boston tonight to speak at the American Society of Breast Surgeons. I'm heading up the survivorship tract, and I'm also teaching breast ultrasound. And I work with, I did the initial research on a technology called optical coherence tomography from Perimeter that helps surgeons look at the margins intraoperatively to know that you got a clean margin, so you have to bring somebody back. So cutting edge, state-of-the-art Western medicine, and that has been my world. I got brought into the world of integrative medicine, reiki, massage, all of the body work, holistic healing. But it took this journey out here to be really pushed to a point where suddenly my eyes got open to the world of psychedelic therapy and where we can go in Western medicine with helping to shift consciousness and also to help alleviate anxiety, depression, PTSD. I've said it multiple times. I said, if I could, people say, well, if you had one wish, what could you do with your training in psychedelic therapy? I said, I want to go to Washington. I want to lock down Congress. I want to dose them all up, give them 4 grams of mushrooms, and have enough facilitators there, and watch people begin to focus on what we have in common, not how we think differently. And to me, somebody had said you need 300,000 people. I said, I think you only need Congress, because if you start there, you can begin to change policy. And I've loved following the world of psychedelics and getting trained in it, because I'm going to get the opportunity this fall to work with veterans and help facilitate and volunteer my time to help facilitate healing in veterans. And as MDMA and psilocybin get legalized in this country, and as we begin to realize, there's just a thing in National Geographic about iboga for heroin addiction and for alcoholism.
Right.
We're getting back to using plant medicine in ceremony and in this, I'm not abdicating, or I'm not not abdicating. Listen, that's what you do to the throne. I'm not,
You're definitely not stepping down yet. We need
I'm not
you.
stepping down. I'm not abdicating. I'm not advocating for. I've done that before. I don't know why. Maybe I think I'm on a throne sometimes. I don't know. I'm not advocating. I'm not advocating for people to utilize any of these recreationally, because I do not believe that these beautiful plant medicines. I mean, psilocybin is Tia nanocado. It's the flesh of the gods. For thousands and thousands of years, peyote, iboga, psilocybin, and ayahuasca have been used in ceremony for healing in many indigenous cultures. And, that's the focus of this next chapter of my life is I'm going to go learn from the indigenous cultures. I want to bring that knowledge back into our Western medicine world. And the easiest way to do that, right, is what I'm doing right now with breath work. I get up every morning and I'm doing breath work through a yogi, Ishan Shivanand. He's an amazing individual who I met his dad, Babaji, many years ago, and learned breath work. And Ishan came here on a visa in 2017, has done amazing research in utilizing breath work 35 minutes a day. And that breath work stimulates your vagus nerve, brings you out of fight or flight. And so a lot of the stuff that I'm doing with the mind vibe and the vagus stimulation, and a lot of the stuff that's happening through psychedelics is bringing people down to a leveler playing field of calm.
I love that. And I've noticed that your journey, when I read her book, The Healing Consciousness, your life changed when you started learning about these practices, and I watched you become more personal with your patients and more emotionally invested, and that element of compassion and love. And I feel like that's a divine feminine, if you want to call it, because nature, Mother Earth, she's so compassionate. And I feel like you have successfully brought that back into medicine wherever you touch clients and the field. And then what I'm trying to say with that is, when you're talking about Congress, experiencing plant medicines and bringing ceremony in plant medicines, this all feels like something we've lost. And it's like we've kind of divorced that feminine touch.
We've lost community.
Yes.
Big time. We've lost community. We've lost family. We've lost that. I mean, I grew up there were 9 of us at the dinner table almost every single night growing up. We didn't have a lot of money. I was telling somebody that it's funny because I rewind back to, you can get into so many conversations about white privilege. And I grew up privileged because I had 2 loving parents. I had a roof over my head. I always knew where I was going to sleep every night. And although we didn't have a lot of money, my parents did a really great job with what they had. And they didn't covet somebody else's stuff. I think about it all the time because one of our meals, I think we used to have it almost twice a week. My mom there were 9 of us, would fry a pound of bacon. She would have a 5-pound bag of potatoes, which she would boil and then fry the potatoes in the bacon grease. And she would hard boil some eggs, and we'd go out in the backyard before we had dogs and pick all the dandelion, which now people spray their yards to get rid of the dandelion.
Right.
They don't want to see it, but we would go back, pick all the dandelion, and she would cook it, and then put the hard boiled eggs in it. And if my sisters watch this, they'll be laughing because this was like the meal. It'd start with my dad, go the whole way around, and I was really skinny when I was young, probably because I was the 9th one to get the food around the table. That should happen again now, but those simple. My parents had a way of making. We had hand-me-down clothing, and I am incredibly privileged now. I feel I had the privilege of going to college, paid my own way through medical school, but I had the opportunity. I was given that opportunity because I was raised by loving parents who believed that we could do anything that we could. And my dad wanted me to be a plumber. He's like, you can make a lot of money. I'm like, Dad, this isn't just about making money. I said, I'm going to be a human plumber instead, because at first I did general surgery, so I did do a lot of human plumbing. Wow. But I am fortunate that my soul chose to be born into a family in the United States of America in 1961. I got to watch the war on drugs, which is so funny because I was so anti everything. I'm still a believer that marijuana shouldn't be legalized for consumption until a brain is fully matured in the mid-20s, because early brains, I think, are very susceptible to it, and I'm entitled to my opinion. I'm not making the law, but my kids don't smoke it, and I wouldn't have wanted them to smoke it until they got older.
Yeah.
I personally don't think that we give enough credibility and credence to the research that's been done in that space, because it's all politics. And I don't believe that psychedelics at this point should be widely legalized, because they are such a wonderful tool for us to use to help heal. And I don't want to see the wheels fall off this bus before they get a chance to be able to help heal people who are suffering and not getting relief from medicine.
Yep.
My main reason for getting into psychedelics was, when you do the research, you find out that the depression that's associated with cancer is not adequately treated by any current pharmaceutical agents that are out there. It's a different kind of depression. And I call it the existential crisis depression, where it's not just that you wake up in the morning and you feel down and depressed. You are down and depressed, but for a lot of my patients, it's the fear of recurrence, it's the fear of leaving their family early, and those are things that, now they want to have a diagnostic code and treat the grief and loss of a child with a pill. And that's not, there's no parent that gets over the loss of a child. You don't heal, you don't get that doesn't get fixed with a pill. My dad, at the age of 94, I was with him the 2 nights before he transitioned, and I was there all night long, and my brother had passed away over 40 years ago. And I was with him because he was having a really tough time getting up to go to the bathroom, wetting himself. I had to change him and get him all dry and put him back to bed. And the second time that happened, it was probably 4 in the morning. I was exhausted and he was tired, and I kind of tucked him all in and had him dry and a new Depends. And when I tucked him in, he said, well, thanks. He goes, all your sisters left. He goes, thanks for staying with me, Bart. And that's my brother's name. So I knew that my brother was there for him. I knew he was going to transition soon. Because my dad felt his presence, and we don't do death really well in this country either, but that's a whole other topic.
My dad he took his own life a couple weeks ago because he was in so much pain and did not get. I had introduced him to psychedelic healing, and it changed his and our relationship, and he was able to wake up to that peace inside, which makes me feel so good. But his physical body was not getting the Western medical care that he deserved, and so I really saw how important the two are to marry together when we have.
You've got to be able to use the best of both worlds.
And the emotional.
Believe me, when you're in a car accident and your spleen's ruptured, you need that level 1 trauma center to be able to be there to bring you back and put you back together.
How do you not get discouraged with how much work there is to be done in medical care? Because you seem to focus on, what can I do? And you do a lot. Like, is that where you try to keep your mindset with trailblazing? And
a lot of it I feel is guidance. These 3 companies I'm working with have been, they kind of found me. I don't go out and look for stuff. And I've been working in the electroceutical industry with a company called Interstill on stimulating the vagus nerve, transcranial stimulation, and another company that we have a non-narcotic pain patch to. It works great for menstrual cramps. We're doing a product testing trial in endometriosis, and I'm working to get that company through the FDA. So every company that I'm working with is basically looking at healthcare outside the box of, how do we not just continue to put a Band-Aid on a situation? How do we not just continue to put a pill for the ill and treat a symptom, but wind it back to root cause, to re-establishing homeostasis in our body, mind, and spirit. And at the same time, I'm going to be starting back with my East Coast hospital part-time, doing surgery and helping to bring some of these modalities into our hospice and palliative care program, because I've been on the board ever since I left there. They value me. They are allowing me to kind of walk between these worlds where if I had completely abandoned my Western medical roots, which are amazing, and we need Western medicine for acute care, but a lot of chronic health issues need to be dealt with in a different way than just going into a doctor's office and getting a pill. And I think if we've learned anything from COVID, the highest risk patients were the elderly with comorbidities, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and people with weak immune systems. So we really need to take this opportunity in the world to, what I consider is raised consciousness to people to recognize that, we are all we have autonomy over our bodies. We all have the opportunity to make changes in our day-to-day lives that can not only impact our health and well-being, our children's health and well-being, our community's health and well-being, our country's health and well-being, and the planet.
And I'm sorry, but there's your book again, and just how many layers of the world you're affecting. And it's like from the personal, because that book is very personal. You share a lot about yourself and how, your processes, and it's like takes you through an awakening and integrating that into a career, and then making new changes in your career.
I had a lot of there's a first edition of the book that didn't have the angel channelings, and I was told at first not to put them in because they said, you're already going out on a limb by
a publisher.
By telling all the stuff, and then after I went through the blue lines in the book and it got published, it was the wrong paper, the wrong cover, the corrections on the blue lines hadn't been made, and it was frustrating at first because I was like, I think they even spelled my name wrong in the copyright, and I kind of had to set it down and go, okay, listen, the message is still the same message, whether the mistakes were there in the book. And we only printed 10,000 at first, and then they sold. So I was able to do a second edition, which Brian Weiss wrote the foreword. I was able to have the channelings put in. I got the textured cover that I wanted. I got the pages the way that I wanted, the ones that stay white and they don't yellow. And so we've reprinted, I think, 3 times now. And I'm going to be signing some books up in Boston at the American Society of Breast Surgeons. Most of the doctors have my book, but we're raising some money for the foundation. And it's good because I had put my other book aside from 2018, and now I've been working on it every day because it's time for that. Because my third book, called Arrhythmia of the Soul, I already have like 12 chapters done, so I have to get the second one done before the third one. So, it's what I'm being, I'm being called to do it. It kind of ties together all the stuff that I'm doing in healthcare, and I'm not going to let go of what I do in Western medicine, because Western medicine has been the greatest gift for me, because I've learned what we can do to help people heal and to treat disease, and I've also been able to take a critical view of what we cannot do and find other ways to approach those problems.
We need to get to some of your accomplishments in a very short time. I think what I've learned from you is that you did the first live streamed mastectomy
On the internet?
On the internet, and you told me everyone was telling you not to do it because if you made a mistake, it would be broadcast.
Yeah.
And that seems like one of the most high pressure situations I could ever imagine.
It is a high pressure situation. I mean, this was back in, 1990. I was still doing general surgery. I think it was before Dean was born. It was a long, long time ago, back in the early 90s. And it was an opportunity that came up because I was part of a show on breast cancer education from America's Health Network. They had come to me to try to find a patient the year before. I thought they kind of left it go.
Yeah.
And then they came back, and I had a patient, Patty Derman, who was a nurse at my current hospital, Redeemer. I wasn't there at the time. And she was willing to do it, and she was doing it for risk reduction. She had had multiple episodes of precancerous and non-invasive cancer, and was just like, I'm done. And so the hospital almost pulled the plug on it at the last minute, because they're like, there's a lot of liability. I said, listen, we have an opportunity to educate women, to teach them not to be afraid. And It was the surgery went off. There was some. You read the book, so you know that there was a little fire in the OR the day before. Clearing the energy.
Clearing the energy. I love her attitude. She said, "Oh, we're just clearing the energy."
And then the next day, we did the surgery. Patty did great. She was originally not going to be public with her name, so I don't know that many people would watch, but it was live cast to 1.5 million people around the world. And then a couple months later, we were given a Gracie Allen Award for excellence in broadcasting because we were literally stepping out of that comfort zone. It was one of the first reality anythings. And I did a conference recently. I was a speaker. I spoke on, first time I ever did the lecture, I had to do the lecture on the science of pain. And, you know, I don't ever shy away. I'm a good public speaker, so I don't shy away from doing a lecture. And it was kind of a pain because I started, you know, my background's, my undergraduate degree is in behavioral neuroscience. So I know, and I know about pain, I know about science, I know about behavior, but I didn't know about endometriosis pain. And as I took this dive into looking at pain fibers and how they're transmitted and how things work, I found, I didn't realize that endometriosis pain is not helped at all by non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which most women that have menstrual cramps can take Motrin and get relief. And it was an eye-opening thing. I'm a doctor. I've been a doctor for 35 years, or a surgeon. I've been a doctor for 40 years. And it gave me this level of, wow, here's a disease, I call it an orphan disease. Here's a disease entity that affects 10% of women, and we don't have the answers yet. And so as I did my deep dive into this, that's why we're doing a product testing trial with our the Jovi patch. And so far, a significant number of women are finding improvement, but I wanted to do that, so we got to go on to then do a full-blown clinical trial. So I'm meeting with I won't mention the name of the hospital, but I'm meeting with a lead physician at a big hospital in Boston to talk about a clinical trial for us, because now that I know that we could help alleviate pain for those women, I want to do the trial. But what I found out also was, and this is where the universe brings me full circle, because in my deep dive into the pain and endometriosis, I found a clinical trial out of China that found out that they did research on mice. First of all, they measured the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system in women based on using heart rate variability. So you can decide whether you're cortisol, sympathetic, high stress, or low stress, high parasympathetic, out of fight or flight, in rest and digest. So the women that had endometriosis were here in the high sympathetic. And what they did was then they took mice and they injected mice with endometriosis. They put it in their belly. The one group of mice, they cut the vagus nerve, and the endometriosis flourished. It got really bad. In the group of mice where they put it in but they stimulated the vagus nerve, the endometriosis was kept at bay.
Wow. Then
they took mice that had well-established endometriosis. They stimulated the vagus nerve, and they were able to see those implants. They didn't decrease in number, but they decreased in their volume. And so those two things, just the pain patch, the vagus nerve, and then the third thing was, because I'm involved with Gateway Sciences, where we already have a ketamine clinic in California, we're going to be in the world of psychedelics, because ketamine is the only legal entheogen right now we can use for refractory depression. There was a case study of the Netherlands where they used ketamine, low dose, not at a dissociative level, but low dose, to treat a woman's endometriosis pain. She got 8 weeks of relief the first time and 12 the second time. So I know that the three things that I have been brought into cross so many different disease entities. They cross so many different avenues that it happened for a reason. Like I'm doing this. If not me, then somebody else. I'm just showing up, and I'm excited about this next chapter of my life. I came out to Sedona thinking that I was going to build this integrative cancer center, and like that was the call. But it wasn't even ready to be an integrative cancer center, because you needed to get to that point where you were at the highest vibration of Western medicine, which, it wasn't. And in that process of getting there, I got awakened to multiple other modalities that can really help us move forward as a society, as a country, as a world. I'm excited about it, because I went back and reread the one chapter of the second book, and it was funny because my friend Bill gave me Sean Akers' book called The Happiness Advantage. If you haven't read it, it's a great book. And in the book, it talks about how you go through life and 3 real phases. And first is the job. So my job, I became a doctor, and I could have hung up a shingle. Job, wonderful. I could have made a difference in a lot of people's lives. I would have been a damn good doctor. Career was and at the time I was thinking my career was as a general surgeon and then moving into breast surgery, but my career was really surgery. That was my career, being a surgeon and bringing Eastern healing modalities and integrative medicine into surgery. That was my career. And that chapter kind of got to the place of my calling, which I thought my calling was to come to Sedona to bring Eastern healing modalities more into surgery. But my calling was just remembering that I'm a healer. I just chose to be a surgeon. I became a doctor, and as a healer, it doesn't matter if I'm healing by putting a non-narcotic patch on someone to alleviate their pain, or to go to Mexico and help guide veterans through an ayahuasca ceremony and facilitate so that they can have deep soul healing. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. We can't change the world unless we become the change. If we can't become who we want the world to be or what we want the world to be, then you can't ask it of others. And that's the one thing that I have tried to do throughout my career is, honoring each and every person that comes along the journey that works with you. So I, in my office, like my staff always works with me, they don't work for me. In the OR staff works with me, they don't work for me. And to me, that changes the energy of how patients are cared for, because you create the team that's working toward a common goal instead of, well, you need to be in this position, you need to be in this position. I mean, I worked with someone at one point in my life who, it's like, well, you shouldn't have the nurses over to your house because they'll see where you live and they'll see what you have and they'll be jealous. And I'm like, I've had more OR parties on this patio, which, listen, I worked my butt off to get this house. It's not like somebody, gave me a trust fund and said, hey, listen, I worked my rear end off. My husband and I have worked for, next 2 weeks from now will be our 36th anniversary. And we've worked together as a team for 36 years to be able to live where we want to live, and live how we want to live. But we also continue to give back to humanity, give
Absolutely.
back through my foundation is one of my greatest passions, because it's all the healing consciousness. It's all about healing. It's not about providing, surgical services for patients. It's providing the healing services that patients don't receive from Western medicine. And one of the greatest things that happened, I was coming back from when my dad was transitioning, and I got on the airplane and I got an email, and it was from the administrator of the foundation, and she said, Dr. DuPree, we got this letter, I just wanted you to have it. So I downloaded it on my phone, and I'm flying back, and I start crying because there was a woman that I took care of in 2011. I did her surgery. She never joined the support group. She didn't use the certificate services. She didn't use the individual services of the foundation, but she came to a weekend retreat. And to me, these 3 and 4 day retreats are transformational. They change lives. She came to a retreat in 2011. That was the last time I saw her in the office, in 2011. She passed away in January, and she left the foundation $300,000 in her will.
Oh, wow.
And that's, almost 12 years ago was the last time we had contact. And we touched her life so much by helping her find healing that she wanted to be able to help more people get healing. And that's my why.
I have chills, Beth. Thank you. And I really want to stress that your best efforts are improved when you yourself are balanced.
Absolutely.
So start there.
So here's your balance. There's your beginning of your balance.
Start here.
There you go.
And then
And the best part
go
about
out
the
and
balance
spread
rock
that.
is it's not balanced. You have to balance it so that it actually finds its fulcrum,
That's powerful.
It'd be easy if it was,
You're right.
it's like getting on the seesaw, sister.
Thank you. You are such an
I love you.
inspiration to
Give me
me.
a hug.
I love you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
And
for
I
you.
hope you find a place here in Sedona because we need more high vibration people
Oh
like you.
gosh, you're my people. I love it.